In today's episode of How to Invest in Real Estate, we'll be talking about the substitution of collateral clause. Stick around. It's an important tool to have in your tool belt. The substitution of collateral clause is a major tool for any real estate investor, especially if you are an investor that likes to sell your properties with seller financing or owner financing. Now, a lot of people don't know about this clause, and they'll learn about it when it bites them in the wallet. So the goal of the episode today is to teach you about the substitution of collateral clause before you have to suffer the loss and it sticks with you forever. In today's episode, we're going to learn what is the substitution of collateral clause, when do you need to use it, and why do you need to use it. On my weekly group coaching call, it's always a shame when one of my students calls in and says, "Hey, I have great news. I got the seller to finance me a property at 0% interest for 20 years. And then I ask them, "Did you put in a substitution of collateral clause?" And you hear this long moment of silence, and you know that they didn't. It takes a great day and takes a little juice out of it, but still a good day, but it could have been so much better. Let's talk about the substitution of collateral clause this student did not put into his contract. So let's review the deal. This student calls in and says he got the seller to finance $120,000 at 0% for 20 years. That's great news. But that news could have been so much more if he would have added a substitution of collateral clause into the note he made with the seller. And I'm going to tell you why. First, let's just get to the definition of substitution of collateral. What does that mean? We should all have this substitution of collateral clause memorized, and it goes something like this. Maker, at maker's sole discretion, has the right to substitute collateral, provided that at the time of the substitution, A, the collateral being substituted is equal to or greater in value than the collateral it is substituting for, and B, the potential cash flow of the substituted collateral is equal to or greater than the potential cash flow of the collateral that it's being substituted for. It makes perfect sense, right? If you were going to carry a note for someone and allow them to substitute collateral, you would want the collateral that they are giving you in place of the collateral that you had, that they would be equal in value and in cash flow potential. So that makes perfect sense. This substitution of collateral clause gives you, the note maker, the right to preserve the fantastic terms of this note for the duration of the term. This is very important. I'm going to get to some scenarios here where you can get messed up if you don't put this clause in. And it also protects the lender, the person who's giving you the loan. It also protects them because you can't just willy-nilly give them a piece of substitution of collateral, anything you want. It has to meet a certain criteria. It has to be equal to or better than the piece that you're substituting. So when do you need to put in this substitution of collateral clause? Well, you need to do it whenever you've orchestrated or negotiated for a super fine loan, a really good loan, either a low interest rate or a long term or a combination of the two. Whenever you've negotiated with your seller to finance a property to you at super fabulous terms, you need to remember to put this clause in because you will not want a few things that could happen and mess you up. We're going to talk about that next. Now we're to the why of why you use it. And let's just get right to it. Once upon a time, I had a house that I negotiated for. I negotiated perfect terms, 0% interest, 20-year term, and it was great. It was wrappable, and it was collateral only. This whole thing was a beautiful note. And then I went and I sold it to someone. I sold it to someone for double what I had paid for it. and I did a wraparound mortgage where I seller financed. My buyer gave me a down payment and owed me 30 years worth of payments. These payments were bigger than the payments I owed to my lender, the seller. So my person, say, would make me like a $1,200 payment, and I would pay out $700 to my lender, and I'd keep the difference. And it was all fine. It went like that for about 1 year. And then my buyer went and got refinanced. When he wanted to pay me off, that means I had to pay off my lender. I had to pay off a 0% loan for 20 years, where every payment I made went right to the principal because there was no interest. And because I didn't have a substitution of collateral clause, I had to pay off that beautiful loan. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this segment, when you will learn it eventually when it bites you in the wallet. Well, this is the bite I'm talking about. When you have a beautiful seller finance loan and you do not put a substitution of collateral clause in, and then through some circumstances, this loan is going to get paid off now. And why in the world would you ever want to pay off a 0% long-term loan? So this is why you need to have a substitution of collateral clause in every single note that you create with a seller, that it has fantastic terms. I'm also going to show you from a different angle how much it costs you when this happens to you. All right, so stay tuned. But before we get to that point, I want to encourage you to hit that like button and to hit that share button and to subscribe. And please help us tell the world about this YouTube channel. We're going to be delivering tons of really great content in year to come. All right, let's revert back to our example, and I'm going to put this into some numbers for you. If you had a 0% loan for $120,000 for 20 years, and you had to go borrow that money at 5% instead of 0, I've run the amortization schedules, and the difference between 5% and 0%, it costs you $70,000 cash over the life of that loan, okay? Now, if you were to have to replace that $120,000 loan with 10% money, it would cost you $158,000 over the term of that loan in interest. So by having a 0% interest loan that you could transfer that loan to collateral after collateral after collateral, it's saving you somewhere between $70,000 and $158,000 probably, being able to transfer that 0% loan to someplace else instead of having to pay it off. So if you were listening to my weekly Q&A call every week for the last 5 years, you would already know a ton of this stuff because it gets covered in real time from real scenarios, from people that are doing it or from people who forgot to do it and are kicking themselves on the phone call saying, you know, I forgot to do it. So I would like to give you a free 1.5 hour rendition of one of those calls where you can listen in to a real archived call and see how those calls flow and how the tone of those calls go. I think you'll find it interesting. Just go to 1000houses.com/free-stuff and scroll up and down there until you see the link that reads recorded Q&A call, and click on that, and that recorded call will be digitally downloaded to you and you'll be listening to it in seconds.